a man who they say he murdered 3. Strange things have happened there. No stranger would it be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree.
Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Chris James. If you want me to look at lights in the sky, roast these beans. If you don't know what that's all about, you haven't been listening to Trailer Trash Terrors. Vic Hermanson had David Griffith on, and they were talking about lots of interesting things. I was cleaning out the pantry and the refrigerator while listening. Roast these beans should be obvious. Coffee, which has no beans, is needed if you're going to stay awake all night looking at the stars. The best coffee beans on earth are found at the Organic Man Coffee Trike, 4501 McPherson here in Laredo, or organicmancoffeetrike.shop for those too far to drive over. Julio roasts the beans right there in the back room. That is actually the side room. Drinking bad coffee leads to thinking bad thoughts. I was on Paranormal Roundtable with Josh Turner, and he had talked about a guy he'd heard about who'd had some very bizarre dreams. I'm not going to talk about the dreams because, well, that's his story, and I'm hoping that someday Josh will put them in a book. It was a wow story. Where do dreams come from? I know folks with a bunch of letters behind their names say it's all some kind of a chemical process. The body is dumping chemicals into the blood while we sleep, and this is causing our brains to wander about. You know what they say about a PhD? They know where the library is. I probably read as many, if not more, books than some PhDs out there. But since I dropped out of school when I was 16, I'm not allowed to have big ideas. Too many people say everyone dreams in black and white, with only a handful actually dreaming in color. Well, that's not true. 90% dream in color. The big problem is most run into is they forget what they dreamt as soon as they get out of bed. What really gets me wondering is reoccurring dreams. I've had the same basic dream on and off for maybe 20 or 30 years, and it's as weird as they get. It starts out with me and my wife, along with a bunch of others. Sometimes they're family members, and sometimes I'm wondering who are these people that insist on hanging out with us. They act as if I should know them. We are in some kind of a multi-story building that is shaped like a giant oval or a rectangle. The building is atop a huge hill, and sometimes it's a mountain. There are thousands of windows on the walls. The middle of the building is an open courtyard, a huge courtyard, almost big enough to land a plane in. The inside is either a shopping mall or an airport, or sometimes a combination of both, which is weird because the structure is nothing like any airport or shopping mall I've ever seen. It's one of those things that you just know in a dream. On a few visits to the land of Nod, the story takes place at an indoor amusement park. It's one of those dreams things where you know information that has no play in the dream. As a group, we walk around the building looking for some unknown item. Either there is somebody we need to find, or some purchase we're there to make. The walking and the looking part goes on way too long, like a half a day or so. In the dream, I'm never aware of it being a dream, but I have the feeling of deja vu. I know I've seen these sights before, even when the building is different from any of the other dreams. The reason I remember so many details is I start writing down everything I remember as soon as I wake up. I now have several dozen pages on this one dream. We eventually wind up outside where there's a huge garden filled with trees and exotic plants. We walk around out there for a bit, finally coming to a paved road leading down the side of the mountain. The group wants to stay in the garden, so me and my wife walk down the trail to see where it goes. We come to a long, wide, open cave or tunnel. The ceiling is about 15 feet up and the sides are 20 to 30 feet wide. The trail leads us in, so we follow. As we're walking along, the right side of the cave has a bunch of openings so we can see out. There's a river right next to the wall. People are coming back from the end of the tunnel. They all have a weird look on their faces. Maybe they've seen something that they wish they hadn't. This is a time there is missing information from the story. It's funny how in a dream, sometimes you know things for no reason at all, and other things you don't know things that you really should. The people passing us are speaking in hushed tones and looking around as if worried that they're being followed. I hear references to the witch's hole several times. It's back there at the end of the tunnel. We finally get to the end, and there, high up on the wall, maybe 8 or 10 feet, is a square opening, big enough to crawl through on your hands and knees. The opening looks like what I had seen way back when I was younger and would sneak into Fort Crockett in Galveston. The fort was underground, and it ran from the center of the island all the way to the ship channel on the far east end. There were three huge 15-inch gun emplacements used to ward off attacks by U-boats during World War II. There were also dozens of smaller gun emplacements as well as machine gun bunkers along the beach. On the far side of the ship channel in Bolivar were other gun emplacements at Fort Travis. Back in the Dreamland, we hear from a bunch about the leave. The hole is where the witch hangs out. If I want to see her, which they all say that I shouldn't, I have to stand on my toes and look into the hole. Oddly, my wife isn't concerned one way or the other. Knowing her, she should have grabbed my arm and dragged me away back to the outside. I get close to the opening and I place my hand on my belt where my pistol should be, but it's not there. I never go anywhere without carrying. Just as I'm raising up on my toes, I wake up. The first thing I think is, what is inside that opening? I realize I've had the same dream and I jot down any changes that I saw. I keep a notebook right by the bed. Aside from the group we start out with and a few small details about the building, everything else is the same. I wonder, will I ever see what or who is inside the hole? In dream interpretation, they say when we dream of an airport, it could indicate that we are on a journey of personal growth or self discovery. The same thing goes for dreaming of walking in a tunnel. It signifies that we are moving forward, exploring new possibilities, and gaining new experiences along the way. A crowded dream involved being in a confined area with many other people often relates to anxiety and stress, being unable to move around freely or escape from the crowded environment. I would not survive if I lived in Tokyo. I do not like crowds. Those around are indistinguishable from one another. Their voices just merge into a rumbling sound. If I'm reading this correctly, I don't like where I'm at, and I want to move to a new location. True, Laredo is becoming too big, and I'd love to be out in the country, but I hate changing my entire life in such a way. Maybe I could get everybody else to move. And the fact that I've had this same dream for maybe 30 years, what is it I'm trying to change that hasn't changed yet? In the Bible, there are lots of references to dreams and what they meant. The Old Testament has the word halom, meaning dream. These are dreams sent by God. In the New Testament, two Greek words are used for dreams. A night vision is used to signify a message dream. Joseph had three message dreams concerning the birth of Jesus. In the three dreams, an angel appears with instructions which Joseph understood and obediently followed. A good thing, too. The three wise men were warned in a dream not to return to Herod. Paul had a night vision of a man urging him to go to Macedonia. This vision in the night was likely a message dream. Through it, God instructed Paul to preach the gospel in Macedonia. Symbolic dreams require an interpretation. They contain symbols and other non-literal elements which are not plainly understood. In ancient Egypt, the dream world existed between the land of the living and the world on the other side, a world inhabited by deities and the spirits of the dead. Dreams were communications from these entities. Pharaoh dreamed of 7 fat, healthy cows and 7 skinny, sick cows. He dreamed of 7 plump ears of corn and 7 shriveled ears of corn. In both dreams, the smaller consumed the larger. None of the wise men in Egypt, diviners who usually interpreted dreams, could understand what Pharaoh's dream meant. Pharaoh's butler remembered that Joseph had interpreted his dreams in prison. Joseph was freed, and God revealed to him the meaning of Pharaoh's dream. The symbolic dream predicted 7 good years of prosperity and 7 years of famine. This allowed Pharaoh to order food stored during the 7 good years to get them through the 7 bad years. God gave Daniel the ability to interpret Nebuchadnezzar's dream. One of those dreams predicted that Nebuchadnezzar would go insane for 7 years, live in a field like an animal, with long hair and fingernails, and eat grass. A year later, the dream came true. I find it odd, bizarre, unexplainable when folks who profess to believe in God and say they read the Bible will also say that dreams are just your imagination run wild while you sleep. These are the same people who don't think the devil is real, still out there looking to do bad things. They're also the same people that tell me that references to giants in the Bible were just metaphors. The ancient Greeks had many theories about why we dream. In Homer's Iliad, written in the early 7th century BC, Homer described a dream that Greek king Agamemnon has regarding the war with Troy. It was a false dream sent by Zeus. The dream went, "Go, deadly dream, along the Greek ships." They spoke kind of weird back then. Seeing as Zeus had sent the dream to Agamemnon, the Greek soldiers believed that it had to be true. "If any other man told us this dream, we would call it a lie, turn our backs on him." Well, Homer believed dreams were prophecies. The poet incorporated dreams into most of his writings. Theories on dreams in ancient Greece formed around polarities. Either a dream was true or false, divine or natural. The Greeks had philosophers whose job it was to interpret dreams and determine if they came from Zeus or they were caused by eating too much before going to bed at night. How this was accomplished was kept secret by those making money doing it. The boys in the white togas couldn't just make things up and pretend they knew what dreams meant. If they were to give out some bad readings, like, oh, say, they told the king it would be a good idea to invite Medusa over for lunch, they would find it very hard, as in all over, to get anything else done. Aristotle took a more agnostic view of dreams. In his works on dreams, written around the middle and the 4th century BC, Aristotle explained that during sleep, when the eyes are closed and unable to see, there is an absence of external sensory stimulation, and nothing is perceived by the sleeper. He compared dreams to waking hallucinations, writing, "The faculty by which, in waking hours, we are subject to illusions when affected by disease, is identical with which produces illusory effects in sleep." Aristotle ultimately came to the conclusion that dreams were due to residual movement of the sensory organs, and some dreams may even be caused by indigestion. Once again, it was something they ate before going to bed. The ancient Greek philosopher Epicurus attributed dreams to a natural rather than a divine origin. The philosopher said, "Dreams have no divine nature nor any prophetic force, but originate from the impact of images on the senses." Plato said dreams were one of the ways by which God shared his plans and intentions with humankind. He thought some dreams did occur naturally, while others were sent from above. The Greek physician Hippocrates placed emphasis on the role of dreams as a significant indicator of the dreamer's physical condition and provided a theoretical basis for the use of dreams as insight into the condition of the body. He assigned dreams as a very high status in his diagnostic theory. Hippocrates believed there were two types of dreams, namely those sent by gods and those sent by the soul. Dream interpretation for the ancient Greeks was typically a way to determine the course of medical treatment. If the name Hippocrates sounds a bit familiar to y'all, that's because of the Hippocratical Oath. Do no harm, that a lot of doctors need to go back and revisit. A quick jump ahead in time, Edgar Casey would put himself into a trance where he would dream a diagnosis for his patients, many of whom he never even met. He would get requests for diagnosis from the far side of the planet by mail. He would always charge just a few bucks for his interpretations. He would put himself into a trance where he would have dreams that would tell him what was wrong with the patient and how to fix them. Casey said that he was connecting with the Akashic Records. The Akashic Records are a compilation of all universal events, thoughts, words, emotions, and intent ever to have occurred in the past, the present, or the future in terms of all entities and life forms, not just human. Casey was right far more often than most doctors are today. Many American Indians viewed their dream space as a sacred place where a person could step outside the bounds of the mundane, day to day existence and connect with a more universal consciousness. Each tribe had their own way of accessing this dimension and what to do with the knowledge learned from the animals and the ancestral spirits that inhabited it. In Australian Aboriginal mythology, the ancestral spirits dreamed up the world, causing everything to become as we see it today. The Aboriginal name for this period of creation translates as dream time or the dreaming. The dreaming exists as a continuity reality, another place of existence that some people could visit in their night dreams, which was used to differentiate from the dreaming. In these special dreams, they can meet and talk with ancestral spirits or witness creation as it happened. Dreaming was a way of connecting with ancestral spirits of the land and learning about the world and keeping the dream time alive. Many cultures share the belief that dreams are important. They occupy a space outside our everyday life and offer a doorway or a portal into a deeper understanding of ourselves and our connection to the universe and everything in it. One dream that a lot of folks in law enforcement have involves being in a shootout only to find that their sidearm is faulty. The barrel is made of rubber or the trigger is missing. I've heard this same dream from a lot of guys that I hang out with. This is as close to a nightmare as I've ever gotten. Dreams of scary things aren't nightmares to me. I think of them more as a cheap movie. They don't have to pay to watch. A guy I knew was a commander in the Navy in Vietnam. He was in charge of a river assault unit. For years after getting out, he would dream of being back there. He would wake up kneeling in bed, holding one hand up to his mouth. Being the guy in charge, he would kneel with just his head above the gunwale, holding a mic to his mouth ready to give commands. During this time over there, he was wounded 7 times and had a whole chest full of medals. He even had a silver star and a bunch of Navy medals that I couldn't identify because, well, I was an Army guy. He was reliving his time in combat. Inez Garcia was the little sister I never had. I first met her here in Laredo. She was a new agent, and I thought she was way too small to be much use in the field. I'm usually wrong when I come to things like that. She met my wife, and the two became close friends. We wound up hanging out with a bunch of the same folks. Folks who were into things like energy healing and paranormal activity, ghosts and aliens. One day, about a year ago, I received word that Inez had died. She what? I tried contacting everybody I knew, trying to find out what was happening. Was this some kind of a sick joke, or did she really leave us? The big suck was when I had to tell Lulu that our close friend was no more. We invited the gang to drive down to McAllen for the funeral, but when it was time, only the two of us were able to go. Later, everybody was wondering, just maybe Inez would contact any of us. If you're missing someone and wish to contact them, you can think. Come by for a visit just before you go to sleep. You just you picture that person in your mind and you say, I would like to see you tonight. It may or may not work. It's one of those things. I've had pretty good success with it. Well, so far, I'm the only person that she's contacted. The others are very upset, wondering why I got to see her and not them. I don't know. Maybe because I was the first one in our group to meet her. I had a dream where Inez met me in a small garden. I saw her and I knew she was dead. She looked a lot younger and she'd lost some weight. She was wearing a knee-length white dress. I was sitting at a round table with just one chair. She was standing nearby, so our heads were at the same level. Like I said, she was a bit small. You know, I asked her, what happened? How was it that she died long before I did? She was supposed to come to my funeral and make funny comments about the things that I had done to deserve dying at a younger age. She ignored any questions I had about what had happened. Instead, she talked about things that weren't very important, like the weather and people that we knew. She moved around me, so I had to keep turning in order to keep her in sight. Eventually, she had gone completely around the table, and I was sitting back facing the direction we had started. I tried again, asking what had led to her untimely death. Well, she just laughed and went on talking about other things. I wrote down all these details as soon as I woke up. When the gang heard that I was visited, they all wanted to know what she said regarding her dying. The official report is not sufficient. They say that she caught some kind of a weird virus, and that's what did it. It killed her the next day. She had gone to the hospital, her and her husband, and not feeling well. The doctor looked him over and said, "Oh, it's just a virus. Go home. Don't worry about it." And she died the next day. Her and her husband had only been married for 6 months. And I also have to say, it was the best wedding I'd ever been to. It was actually entertaining. Well, if you knew Inez, you'd understand that. I tried to find out anything I could about this mystery virus in the valley, but there was nothing. I searched and I searched. I didn't just casually look into this. I spent days trying to find out what was going on. All I ever got was the usual about the Black Plague of 2020, but that wasn't it. That was not what had happened. On many occasions, I would send Inez a message on her phone, even knowing that she was no longer there to receive them. I would send funny memes or short little notes like wishing her a happy weekend or whatever, just nonsensical messages that I hoped that maybe wherever she would see them. One day I got a response. I almost fell out of my chair. I thought, holy cow, a message from beyond the grave. No, it was just her husband, James. He thought that maybe that I had forgotten the funeral. Oh, come on, I'm not that old. Or am I? Well, it was not from her, and in order to make James feel better, I stopped sending her messages. He probably has turned her phone off by now anyway. I'm not the only person visited by dead loved ones in a dream. How do you differentiate between just your mind running around at night and actually being visited by someone? Does the dream feel like it was happening in real life, with clear details that are consistent? In a dream, if you see a sign or any kind of a writing, it won't be the same if you look at it again. If you see a great big sign that says, buy a Chevy pickup, the next time you look up, it'll be a sign saying, you need to visit the Enchanted Rock or something. But the sign will change each time you look at it. The person you're looking at might be wearing different clothes each time you look at them. Also, the background might change. You might be standing in a garden 1 minute or sitting in the front seat of a vehicle the next. Visitation dreams feel far more real than an average dream. It might feel like you're really with the deceased loved one again in the flesh, right down to smells and feelings. The visitation flows along as if real. In most dreams, you actually jump around. Time skips from scene to scene. Details get switched around. A kind of dream that can be very useful is called precognitive. These can also drive you nuts. If you dream of something bad happening on a trip, you can easily avoid problems by not going or changing a few details. If you dream of a plane crash, stay away from airports. If there's a car crash, just stay off the road for a bit. It gets dicey when you dream of major events. A woman dreamed of an attack where dozens of people were killed. She later found out about a terrorist attack in the Middle East. This got her determined to not ignore the next dream, no matter what. Later, she dreamed of a ship passing under the Golden Gate Bridge that blew up. Now for the hard part. She contacted the FBI and they jumped on the information. Well, actually, they thought she was nuts. However, one agent was assigned to look into things. Security was beefed up in and around San Francisco Bay. Nothing happened. You have to wonder, was there anything about to go down and it was foiled by the enhanced security? Or did the woman just have a bad dream? Could the simple act of her notifying authorities of coming terrorist attack have turned the tide of things to come? Did she save thousands of lives or not? Anytime you have a dream that leads to you having to contact the authorities, the response will not be anything like what you see on TV. The knee jerk reaction will be to have the police or the FBI scrutinizing you. They're going to wonder who you are and how you came by the information that you're trying to pass on to them. You will be a suspect until you prove otherwise. On a very few occasions, a dream has led to a conclusion of a crime. In January 1897, in Greenbrier County, West Virginia, the body of Elva Shue was found laying at the foot of a staircase in her home. She had been married for 3 months to Harold Shue, who was known in the area as being a bit hot under the collar, so most folks avoided him. The boy that found Elva ran home and told his mother, who in turn contacted Dr. George Knapp, not the radio host, who was also the county coroner. A coroner is an appointed position unlike a medical examiner. It took the doctor over an hour to arrive at the Shue house, where he found Harold had already moved the body to the bedroom, washed it, and placed it in a new dress with a very high collar. The doctor tried to do his court-appointed duties, but Harold was cradling his wife's head and would get anxious as the doctor got past the chest. The doctor didn't see any reason to dig any deeper, so he put down the cause of death as the everlasting faint, which was changed to complications due to pregnancy. Elva was moved to her hometown for burial. During the funeral, Harold stood at the head of the casket, acting the grief-stricken husband. He had laced a scarf around Elva's neck to go along with the dress. After the body was in the ground, everybody went on with their lives. Mary Jane Hester, Elva's mother, began praying to see her daughter one last time. The next week she had several dreams. Hester said her daughter appeared to her, at first as a bright white light that coalesced into the body of her daughter. For the next 4 nights, Alva told her mother that Harold Shue was a rotten object who was not a good husband. He would hit her and yell at her for the smallest mistake. One night he attacked her in a rage because dinner wasn't up to his standards. He broke her neck. To emphasize this, Alva turned her head around like Linda Blair in The Exorcist. This was the last dream Hester had of Alva. Hester went to the local prosecutor, John Preston, and spent the afternoon trying to get him to reopen the case. Hester must have been very persistent and convincing enough that he decided to ask around town a few questions. Shue's neighbors and friends told Preston about the man's strange behavior at the funeral. Dr. Knapp admitted that his examination had been incomplete. Preston decided there was enough probable cause to exhume the body. A different doctor was brought in to help with the examination, and they determined her neck had been broken, not from a fall, but from somebody's hands. The hyoid bone had been crushed, which is a very rare injury, almost always associated with murder. There was no way of trying Harold Shue to the murder. He acted very strange at the funeral, but, well, most people do. Most murders are committed by somebody who knows the victim. The first person Preston thought of as a suspect was her mother. Hester had come forward with this weird story of dreaming about Alva being murdered. Maybe she had killed her daughter for unknown reasons and was trying to frame Harold. Preston could find no reason for Hester to kill anyone. None of her acquaintances or neighbors had anything bad to say about the mother. The prosecutor began to look closely at Harold and his background. It turned out that Shue had already been married twice before. The first marriage ended in divorce while Shue was sitting in prison. His first wife had told police that Shue was an extremely violent man and he had beat her frequently. His second marriage ended after 8 months with the mysterious death of his wife number 2. While in prison, Shue had boasted that he had planned to marry 7 women in his lifetime. Why? Who knows? Preston decided that he had enough to bring Shue before the court. Hester was the prosecution's star witness. Preston was hesitant to have her say anything about the dreams, figuring that no jury or judge would believe a word of it. He tried to focus on Shue's past and any stories of his violent actions. Shue's lawyer knew about the dreams, so he questioned Hester extensively about Alva's visits during cross-examination. Hester told exactly what had happened in the dreams. Surprisingly, people in the community seemed to believe that Hester was telling the truth. Shue decided that he wanted to take the stand to testify on his own behalf. That's never a good idea, but neither is murder. Shue did more for the prosecution than for the defense. The jury deliberated for an hour and 10 minutes before returning a guilty verdict. A guilty verdict? A guilty verdict. I make up words all the time. If you've listened to the show more than twice, you'll know that. Also, you'll know that I hate editing, so I don't cut things like that out. Shue was sentenced to life in prison, but he died of illness in the 1900s. Dreaming of a bell can have different meanings depending on the context of the dream. I've heard from a few people who say they will hear a bell ringing while they're asleep. I've heard what sounds like the doorbell ring on too many occasions. Instead of the two-tone sound, it's just one tone, but sometimes it rings several times. The bell rings and I wake up thinking that somebody's at the door. I know it's a dream when I don't hear M barking her head off. She barks any time somebody even walks past our house. I no longer get up and go look, but when I used to go look, I did always carry a pistol, just in case. A bell ringing in dreams may indicate something significant is about to happen, such as maybe a promotion at work or a major life decision. It's a sign of change and transformation. Since I'm retired and I don't want to move, I can't imagine what kind of a change is coming my way. Hearing a doorbell in a dream is supposed to be connected to being happier in life. It would mean that your angels or guides are looking over you and want you to know that they are there. If the ringing happens on a full moon, then this can suggest that things are changing in your life for the better. I've heard over and over, if you die in your dreams, you won't wake up. You will be Kaputsky, no more. A lot of folks will reference the young Cambodians who had died in their sleep back in the 1980s. This was the story behind the movie A Nightmare on Elm Street. It is funny how some legends can take on a life of their own. I have died in my dreams a few times. One time I fell from a cliff. I could see the ground rushing up to meet me. I thought, this isn't supposed to be happening. And I hit the ground. Everything went red, followed by blackness. I thought, so this is what death looks like. I couldn't feel anything. I just kind of drifted along. I don't know how long I was in this state, but I did wake up. Obviously. I sat up and I thought, it is possible to die in your sleep without dying. I wrote down as much as I could remember before getting up to greet the day. I didn't even have any coffee yet. This got me to wondering, how did the idea of dying in a dream get started? A doctor wrote about his dream death. He was flying in an airplane that was about to touch down. The landing went sideways and the plane began to be ripped apart as it tumbled along the runway. He watched as the sides of the plane were blown in all directions. He thought, this is it. We're all going to die. Well, that was Arthur Dent, actually. The doctor decided if he was going to die, he wanted to think about all of the things that made him happy. As bits and pieces of the plane and the runway washed over him, he closed his eyes. He thought about his family, not that he would never see them again, but how he was going to see those that had gone on before him. As death enfolded his body, he saw everything turn purple. He felt as if he was floating up into outer space. All the spirits of his loved ones began to gather around him to welcome him to the afterlife. And then he woke up. He felt at peace from his dream, wondering just how real had it been. I've tried all the tricks people write about when it comes to lucid dreaming. I cannot get it to work. Lucid dreams are different because sleepers are aware that they're dreaming and in some cases can exert control over what happens in the dream. Some studies have linked these characteristics to elevated cortical activity. In sleepers who have been observed during lucid dream studies, prefrontal cortex activity levels while they are engaged in lucid dreams are comparable to levels when they're awake. For this reason, lucid dreaming may be referred to as hybrid sleep-wake state. To figure out if you're in a lucid dream, you're supposed to ask yourself, are you awake or not? You do this during the day when you are very much awake. You try to get in the habit of asking so that once you are asleep, you're supposed to ask the same question, to which you will now say, yes, you are asleep. Another thing suggested is as soon as you wake up in the morning, you say, next time I'm asleep, I'll remember I'm dreaming. You do this over and over each morning. It might take weeks or even months, but just keep saying it. Eventually, it's supposed to get into your mind so that at night when you're asleep, you will say, I am asleep and dreaming. Seeing as we spend about a third of our lives on the other side of our eyelids, maybe we should all try to be more productive by taking charge of our dreams. Every morning I write down everything I remember about my dreams, and maybe you should too. Just keep a notebook right there by the bed, and when you wake up, first thing you do is you grab the notebook and scribble down anything you remember. The first couple of tries, it might be nothing but nonsense. Just keep doing it. If you're not any good at writing like that, you could keep a small voice recorder right there handy. And as soon as you wake up, you push the record button and you just say everything you remember about your dreams. Detailed recordings will allow you to recognize dreams more easily once you do fall asleep, which in turn can help trigger a lucid dream. Nope, doesn't work for me. I've tried. I dream and I think it's reality. I wake up wondering if I'm still sleeping. Dreaming about being able to fly without an airplane is exhilarating experience. You get to soar high above the ground, looking around without anything between you and the view. Some people say flight dreams are you yearning for new opportunities, spiritual ascension or growth, confronting fears, a future potential, expressing hidden talent, creative bursts, and new relationships. I say it's just fun to do, and who doesn't want to have fun? It's right up there with dreaming of running around naked, which usually happens in school. The older you get, the more you have to pay attention to this dream. Or did you forget something before walking out the door? Before stepping outside, I always check to make sure I've got my wallet, which is in my pocket, which is a part of my pants. Pants are on, I'm good to go. The rest, well, that's just details. Nudity in dream interpretation is associated with feelings of shame, embarrassment, and vulnerability. Being naked can symbolize a fear of being exposed or judged by others, reflecting the dreamer's insecurities or low self esteem. Being naked while in school and having to take a test, and then flying all at once. While researching dreams, I was reminded of that episode of Kolchak, the Night Stalker, the Spanish Moss Murders. A research experiment in dream deprivation produces a corporal Cajun boogeyman covered in Spanish moss. The creature was known as the Paramafe. That was a cool episode. Every episode of The Night Stalker was cool. Richard Keel played the monster. Of course, Richard Keel played the monster in a lot of episodes. I want to know if not being allowed to dream could really hurt a person. The brain is the only part of the body that has to sleep. The rest can recover simply by relaxing. While asleep, the brain goes through cycles, each lasting about 90 minutes. The managing editor at New Science, Rowan Hooper, said chronic dream deprivation is damaging for our waking hours. By not getting enough sleep or being awoken several times while asleep, it is reducing our immune system by as much as 50%. Not being allowed to sleep means a person also is not being allowed to dream. This can result in hostility as soon as the person wakes up. In wilderness emergency medicine, if a person has a head wound and you're not going to get to the hospital soon, you've got to stop and rest. The patient gets woken up every hour and asked a question that they must answer correctly. After several times being pulled from their dreams, the patient will get very angry and might try to lash out at the medic. It's all part of the job. Since the patient isn't doing any physical activity, the brain is the only part of the body being interrupted. No dreams are being allowed to be processed. This lack of sleep is also interfering with our ability to digest food correctly, which in turn leads to a physical body being affected. The old saying that everybody gets wrong is not a sound mind and a sound body. It goes a sound body and a sound mind. We heal from emotional trauma more quickly when we sleep and dream. By not getting into a sleep dream cycle, our mind gets screwed up. This leads to more depression, which also interferes with sleep. It's a catch 22, only of our own doing. One 2009 study stated, compared with the quiet rest and non-REM sleep, that's rapid eye movement, that shows when you're dreaming, REM enhances the formation of associative networks and interrogation of unassociated information. Volunteers that experience more REM sleep were better equipped for solving problems requiring creative solutions. About 90 minutes after falling asleep is when REM sleep usually starts, and it repeats multiple times throughout the night, with longer, more frequent REM episodes happening closer to the morning. It is essential for brain development, memory consolidation, and emotional control. The brain is active during REM sleep, and the brainwave pattern during this period are similar to those during alertness. People will spend thousands of dollars on exercise equipment or by joining a gym. Some subscribe to diets to enhance their physique. At the same time, they do nothing to enhance their sleep. To sleep, perchance to dream. If death is but a sleep and dying is just like falling asleep, then perhaps we will dream in after death. Perhaps the afterlife will be full of dreams. Maybe when we see a ghost, it's just some spirit dreaming of things they did while still alive. That makes my brain hurt. Just just imagine for a second that ghosts are simply spirits that are dreaming. There are a lot of people who say they never dream. I would hazard a guess. They dream, but they forget them as soon as they wake up. We are supposed to dream about every 90 minutes or so. We spend around 2 hours each night in dreamland. That means I have spent over 48,000 hours sleeping and dreaming. That's a lot of action and adventure movies, space flights, monsters under the bed, and running around naked in public. Okay, how come we don't see naked ghosts then, if it's a spirit dreaming? Hey, we see ghosts flying once in a while. I know a lot of people can't sleep with their foot or their hand hanging off the edge of the bed. Those who have a phobia of things under the bed, maybe because of childhood fears or traumatic experiences from the past. It could also be from watching horror movies or listening to ghost stories. La Mano Peluda is down there. I sleep with one, sometimes both feet hanging over the edge. Sometimes I have my hand hanging off the side of the bed. I know I'm a bit off from a lot of people, but ever since M used to sleep under the bed, I no longer fear the thing under the bed. The most I've ever experienced was having my fingers licked. I hope that was her. There are a few legends on what is happening while we drift through the enigma of sleep. Some believe we actually leave our bodies and venture about actually seeing all the things that we're only imagining. The folks that take illicit or illegal substances to take a trip inside their own mind say they have seen things that cause their current place in life to be better. Then again, I've encountered a few lost souls who never managed to get all their brain back inside. We called them space cadets way back when. I guess the new term is stoners. The mind is a terrible thing. While reading about nightmares, I saw a lot of folks recommending drugs, the ones you get from the doctor, to treat the nighttime horror movies. This is like chopping a hole in the bottom of your boat because it's on fire. I don't like going to any doctors. I do see my dentists about once a year, and I do believe in chiropractors, although I'm not seeing one right now. My dermatologist died last year. I really liked Dr. Hudson. He was a cool guy. We would spend most of our time talking about strange things. Too many folks are doing the whole better living through chemical dependency. Try natural cures first. Walk in the woods is far more stress relieving than any medication. Unless you get chased by a Bigfoot, well, then it can be a little stressful. As for alcohol, if people would stop drinking so much, our prison system would only be about half full right now. If you find you want to know more about dreams and what they just might mean, just do a little searching. Look for dream interpretations. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of sites dealing with what lurks inside our minds. Somewhere in that pile of books behind me are a few books on dreams and what they mean. Keep in mind some of what you'll find is what other people think dreams mean. It's kind of hard to actually do a lot of actual research into dreams since it's all just what people tell you when they wake up. All those big thinkers over the centuries only had their own interpretations on what was going on inside the old gray matter. One good way of learning is through meditation. Clear your mind and let the answers come to you. It worked for Edgar Casey. Hope you enjoyed tonight's show. If you did, tell other people they should be listening as well. Like Tony Merkel from the Confessional said, share the show. We don't care how you share it, just share it. If you'd like to support the show, buy one of my books. Better yet, buy all four. You can get paranormal. Try that again. You can get the Laredo Paranormal Research Society, which is the history of our local paranormal group. Uh, it's their past history, some of the more interesting cases that they studied. It's got ghosts, it's got UFOs, a few cryptids in there as well. Fort McIntosh and the paranormal, which is about 50% history of the fort and 50% paranormal encounters that people have had while there. Paranormal Laredo is just stories from here in town. I had no idea I lived in such an exciting and interesting place until I started asking people for their ghost stories. And lastly, more paranormal stories, which is any story I'd heard from anywhere on the planet. Some of my listeners would send in their stories, and I would put them in the book. If you have a good or not even a very good UFO story, send it to me. I'm working on my next book, which is only UFO stories. Send it to me at strangethings@arcanasa.com. I'll whip it into a readable form and send you back a draft so you can okay it. You can say, yes, that's what happened, or no, wait a minute, that's not what I said. And it will be in my next book, which, like I said, will be nothing but UFO stories. I have to get the book ready for the September UFO Fest in Jefferson. Till next Saturday, this is Chris James for Strange Things.
Are you coming to the tree where they strung up a man who they say he murdered 3? Strange things have happened there. No stranger would it be if we met at midnight in the hanging tree.